Excellent.
Hi, folks. It's great to be back. I have a very special guest for you today. It's FIDE Master Nate Solon, and he's agreed to join us today to talk a bit about Outposts. So we have a chapter on Outposts in my Chessable course, Breaking 1000, and the students have requested to have that supplemented. So I'm very grateful to have Nate here today to talk about this with us. He's quite good at chess strategy, and he's also a Chessable author. So I have posted his links in the chat, or I tried to post them. Okay, I will look into why that is not working very soon. So you can go to his author page and check out his Chessable courses, and also he has a YouTube channel where he's posting a lot of free chess content that's quite good. So you should definitely check out his YouTube as well. So thank you so much, Nate, for joining us today. I'm very excited.
Oh, thank you. Great to be here. I was checking out your course. I think this is like a great resource for people to get up to 1,000. So I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, these Chessable courses, but of course you know everything about that, I guess. So maybe we
Yeah,
should just jump straight into it. I'm very excited to learn more about this outpost, and we have actually one question from one of my students, a concrete question, because they wondered what is the difference between a good outpost or a bad outpost? Is that
okay,
something that's
awesome.
easy to explain?
Um, I think maybe that's something we can get into a little bit later
Yeah,
once we've like laid some groundwork of outposts.
great.
So I'll just make sure to come back to that.
Awesome. And yeah, in general, the students are asking for supplementation because it can be quite difficult to really understand what is the point of an outpost. It's like we can see the knight on the outpost on the chessboard right now, but it's like you don't get anything immediate always. Like maybe you're not winning material or there's no cool tactic, but the knight is just kind of camping out on the outpost. So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. We were just talking before the stream started of this is like a huge mindset shift of usually when people are starting with chess, they're attracted to moves that do something very concrete and sort of
Mm.
violent, like captures, sacrifices, pawn breaks, which you said you talked about last time, like something that changes the position
Yeah.
in a very tangible way. Um, but then so when those opportunities are there, that's great. Like if you have a tactic or an opportunity to capture something, that's great. But
Mm.
most of the time, right, if your opponent is sort of defending themselves well, that type of opportunity is not there. So you have to build up the position a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I think this is something that is quite difficult as a beginner. It's like what do you do in those positions when there's not the clear thing to do? Just this making the small improvements.
okay,
I
great. Well, should we get into some of these examples?
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Okay, great. So I've got this example on the board. I first had so I had a few questions for everyone. So to me, I would consider an outpost like a subset of weak squares. So if
Hmm.
the like a Venn diagram, if the weak square is like the big circle, like the outpost is in there.
Yeah.
Um, so my first question is what is a weak square? Like what makes a square weak?
Let's just give it a couple of seconds and see if someone want to answer in the chat, and then I can give my suggestions. Um, so I would I'm having difficulties not blabbing because I love to answer. I love to answer questions. So Kayudo is writing a square that is not defended by a pawn.
Yeah, so I think this is a great answer. I would change it a little bit and say a square that can't be defended by a pawn.
Yeah, so
Um,
it can never be defended by a pawn.
exactly. So it's a subtle difference, but it's actually really important because so if we look at this, so the outpost here is this knight on d5.
Mm.
So this square is not defended by a pawn, but it's really important that it can't be defended or attacked by a pawn by black ever,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Because black has no pawns on the c file, and this pawn on the e file has already advanced past the point where
Yeah.
it could attack d5. And the reason this is so important is like just imagine this pawn was on e6, or maybe
Mm,
it's on e7 and it can advance to e6. Just imagine black's pawn and queen trading places.
mm, mm.
Even though that's only one square difference, that's a totally different scenario because now then our knight, which in the actual position can never be chased away,
Mm.
here it would have to retreat,
Yeah.
and then that completely changes the whole position because our knight is going backwards. Maybe we lose this pawn, maybe we lose this pawn. That changes everything. So it's really important that not only is it not defended right now, but the opponent has no pawns that can ever attack that square
Mm, mm.
because as long as that pawn can attack the square, eventually your piece is probably going to get chased out, and you can't really rely on that.
And black doesn't even have a light officer to attack d5 as well
Yeah,
because it doesn't
yeah.
have
This
a
this
light
is
squared
this is
bishop and
especially
mm,
exactly, yeah, especially bad for black because this dark squared bishop can't help
mm.
control d5. Good point.
So
Um, so okay, so
are
that
you happy about the answer, or are there more things that makes up a weak square?
yeah, so I would say can't be attacked by a pawn. Generally, we're talking about a square in the opponent's territory
Mm.
because obviously, if you're looking like inside your half of the board, there's many squares that aren't attacked by the opponent's pawns, but that's not really what we're talking about. In terms of weak squares, we're looking at the opponent's camp.
Yeah, and this is also something that is quite interesting to point out actually because it seems so obvious when you say it, but it's not actually that obvious when you're a beginner. Like even knowing what is the opponent's territory. I guess
Mhm.
if you split the board in half
Yeah, I mean, just
horizontally.
the most basic way would be,
Mm,
I've got my four ranks, you've got your four ranks.
mm.
Usually at the beginning of the game, we kind of play on our own half, and then at some point, though, if you want to win the game, you're going to have to venture into the opponent's territory.
Yeah, Simen Agdestein, the Norwegian grandmaster, he was also a very good football player. So he makes a lot of the of references to the chessboard to like the football field. Like you want to advance on the field towards the opponent's goal. And
Yeah,
I never
exactly.
thought about it that way, but it's quite interesting actually. So the weak square should be situated in the opponent's territory,
hmm
and it can
And
never
then
be defended by a pawn.
exactly, and then something else you can think about, which gets back to that initial question of good outpost versus bad outpost,
Mm.
is for it to be useful, you have to be able to access that square. Like you have to be able to get a piece there. If you can't get anybody to that square, it's not very useful.
Yeah. So would you say the square is weaker if the file is half open, let's say?
Yep, that's a great point, and also applies to this position of
Mm.
having this open D file to support this. So already our queen is supporting, and if we wanted, we could bring a rook to
Mm.
add more support to this. Yeah, so that makes it more powerful as well.
Mm. Mm. And yeah, Kayuda is saying there's actually a turn-based strategy game based on football. So I guess there's a lot of strategy to football as well, even though I don't understand it. I just see Groman running around kicking a ball. but uh, but yeah, don't come for me while saying that. But okay, so we have a lot of things that can make up a weak square then.
Yep, and then so that's weak square, and then an outpost is a further subset of weak square. So okay, next question, what makes something an outpost?
Let's see if Kayudo or someone else has an answer to that as well before I answer for them. Do you know, Kayudo, what makes out an outpost? Those is saying a weak square controlled by our pawn.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's a weak square, so the opponent's pawns can't attack it, and our pawn is supporting it.
Yes.
So this is why outposts are so valuable, is because the situation with the pawns is as favorable as it can be in both directions. The opponent's pawns can't challenge it, and also our pawn is supporting it. So from the opponent side and for our side, everything is working in our favor with regard to the pawns to help us control that square.
Yeah, and Kayudo is saying it has to be a pawn defending a piece in the enemy territory. So
Exactly. So
basically the same, but also enhancing that it should be on the in the opponent's territory as well.
and okay, so one more question before we get into some analysis. So then what is the value? Like why is an outpost important? What is the value of this?
Yeah, I think this is exactly what the students are struggling with a bit. So let's see if we can get some answers in the chat. Like I would say, the point of them is to torture the opponent, make them uneasy and
Yeah, I
depressed.
mean that's definitely part because like yeah, when your opponent has a piece in your side of the board, like sort of right in your face,
Yeah.
it does emotionally that makes people, it's uncomfortable. You don't want that piece inside of your position.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people have experienced having a knight situated on the sixth rank or seventh, and you aren't able to chase it away. It's very stressful. Uh, when I had a lesson on Outposts with International Master Petter Haugli, he told me this that one of the greatest values of having the knight on that outpost is just simply to torture the opponent, so they have to wonder when is that knight going to fulfill its dreams of creating havoc, just slowly torturing them.
Yeah.
They never know when that knight is going to jump. So those is saying, suggesting less safe options for your opponent's pieces to move. Oh, that's a great answer because you take up a lot of squares in the enemy territory.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, you can see
Hmm.
that in this position that, for example, this bishop right here is very restricted of
Hmm.
it can't really safely move to very many squares because our knight is dominating it.
Yeah, you
Um,
get a bit of a traffic jam.
and I would say, and that psychological part of it makes the opponent uncomfortable, um, is important too. But I think there's more to it than that because like
Mm.
if it was only psychological, then I guess our opponent could just sort of chill out, and then our strategy would not amount to anything. So
I played a game recently where I got a knight on a really good outpost, and my opponent just slowly imploded and ended up trading the rook for the knight because it became so uncomfortable. So I could just feel it, even though it was an online game. I could just feel they were very uncomfortable because they just started doing a lot of weird moves.
yeah, absolutely. Um,
So I don't know. Do we have any more suggestions for what is the value? I guess maybe not in this position, but in many other positions, a good outpost with a knight situated on it, it could be used for checkmate attacks as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even here, Black's king is, I mean, somewhat, you don't really want your king in the center like that. That's pretty risky.
Mm, mm.
Um,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, what was the question? I was in the kitchen. The question was, what is the value of having a knight situated on an outpost? So we have gotten the suggestions. Freaks out the opponent. You take up a lot of squares in the enemy territory. That makes it difficult for the opponent to move.
Oh, so I think did your microphone just cut out?
Um,
Oh, no, you're still here. Sorry.
okay, okay.
Okay, right. Well,
Maybe you'll just tell us.
yeah, so I'll give you my answer. And what we were talking about was infiltrating into the opponent's position, right? Like in football, like to score a goal, you have to go into their half of the field. In chess, at the beginning of the game, usually you develop, you castle, you kind of get your stuff situated on your side of the board. But then at some point, you have to figure out a way to invade into the enemy position.
Yes.
So the value of an outpost is that it is the most favorable square to start invading, right? Because if you just move a piece somewhere that a pawn can attack it, if the pawn attacks it, you just have to go right back, generally,
Yes.
unless you want to sacrifice a whole piece for a pawn.
Ah,
Um,
that's a
and
very cool way of explaining it. I haven't thought about it that way. And it also made me think about actual outposts, you know, in medieval warfare.
yeah, exactly.
I guess that's why it's called outpost.
And so, for example, something you see quite a lot in beginner games is just like something like, let's say, black moves a knight to g4, and then white just plays h3, and then black sort of sheepishly has to retreat the knight back somewhere, right? So that's what happens if you try to infiltrate to a square that's not weak or not an outpost. Very often you get chased back and you haven't accomplished anything, right?
Yeah. By the way, I have to interrupt you quickly. We got a message in the chat saying, "Oh shit, it's Nate Solon. He's an amazing coach."
Thank you. Yeah, great comment. Thank you. Right. Um,
Yeah,
so it's a, yeah,
it's just foolish to advance that knight when it can just be chased
right.
away. Basically, what was you
Yeah.
were saying?
So, but since a weak square, the opponent has no pawns that can attack it, and also your pawn is supporting it. This
Mm.
is like the best place to start invading into the enemy position. And then once you have that outpost, that can function as sort of like, it's like a Trojan horse. Like now that you're
Mm.
inside the enemy position, you can expand into their position in different directions, like with that solid base.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. I have not heard it explained in that way before. For me, it's crystal clear. Um, so that's a great explanation.
Okay, excellent. So that's sort of some background. Let's get into this position. So this comes from a game, Polgar versus Apol. Not Judith Polgar nor even Susan, but actually Sophia. So probably
Ah.
the least famous of the Polgars, I guess, but they're all really good.
Mm.
So in this position, White has already achieved this knight on a beautiful outpost that
Mm.
can't be chased away. Um, but I think one of the big questions we were talking about too is sort of like, okay, fine, you've got this knight here, it can't be chased away, that's cool. But at the moment, this knight is not attacking anything. So ultimately, like, what is really the point of this, right?
Yeah, the point is to start infiltrating. I don't know if this is the right idea, but I would love to open the A file. Maybe if we could do like A4 or something and get the rook in as well, and then start
Hmm.
getting our pieces in on the left side of the board. But I don't know. Maybe that is completely wrong.
No, actually, you're already one step ahead because in fact, this is the exact move that Sofia Polgar played A4. So the pawn break, I can see Robert taught you well. So you're ready for this one. Yeah, and this is a very powerful move because B takes A4 cannot be played. That would just drop the rook.
Mm.
But if rook takes A4, then takes
and
queen
and the
takes A6.
and the queen comes in, and that is a dangerous couple, the knight and the queen.
Exactly. That's very dangerous. And you can see that one upside of this knight here, one thing it's doing is um, kind of cutting off the board so that black's queen and rook are it's not easy for them to come over to the queen side to help.
Mm, mm. Yeah,
Um,
definitely. So it looks kind of impossible actually.
yeah, so black's in a terrible situation. He played bishop c7, so he's trying to let this rook come over here, which
Yeah.
is probably about the best black can do. So then we had takes, takes, and now this rook infiltrates in
Oh, this looks horrible.
the pin, also teaming up with this knight to pressure here.
Yeah.
So black played rook b8. White was also threatening knight b6 check,
Mm. Yeah,
utilizing
the pin.
this pin. So black played rook b8, and white just played h3, which
Is
just
that
kind of a
is that
little.
to is that to avoid queen g4?
Hmm. Yeah, so it kind of looks like just a little safe move, but it actually also has a hidden threat. Also, just kind of emphasizing that black can't do very quiet move, but black is completely paralyzed. They can't do anything.
Yeah, it looks like all their officers are kind of stuck. It doesn't look fun at
Mhm.
all, like this zero mobility. But it
Exactly. So this,
was there more reasons behind h3 than cutting out the queen?
well, we're about to get to that too. So I'm going to play one more move for black, and now I'll ask you white to move. How can white proceed here?
Hmm. So this is are we on the tactics here?
Could be, could be.
You're not going to tell.
Well, I always, I try to like when I give a position or a puzzle. In general, I feel like the fewer hints, the better, because of course, when you're playing a real chess game, there are no hints. So it's always good to be in the habit of considering a position as you would in a real game as much as possible.
Yeah. Um, it was easier for me to find a4.
Hmm. Yeah, well, a4, yeah, pawn break, positional idea.
But this one, it wasn't immediately clear. We get h4 suggested from the chat. I'm not sure what does h4 do.
Yeah, so hmm,
Zugzwangish
h4 is
position,
Zugzwang.
they're
I mean,
saying.
no, interesting.
Pass the move back.
I guess that does allow something like Queen G4 because it opens up um the G4 square. So black is
Mm.
quite tied down. We're not
Du-
quite to the point of a literal Zugzwang.
we got another suggestion as well, double the rooks.
Yeah, I would say rook over to the A file is a very,
Natural.
extremely solid, extremely reasonable positional move. Maybe you could come in here.
Mm.
So very, very reasonable move. But there is actually a tactic in the position.
Yeah, we got a queen sacrifice suggested here.
Mhm.
Queen takes d3, b takes d3. No, c4.
Okay,
Sorry, he's saying.
queen takes C4 is what they
Yeah,
mean.
queen
Yep.
takes c4, b takes c4, rook takes c7, followed by rook e7.
Yep. And then, so black should go king D8, so there's no check.
Mm.
And then rook E7. And is
Oh,
black's queen trapped or does it have to square?
the queen is trapped.
Well, is
Wait,
it though?
wait, I need to visualize this. Uh,
This is good. And here's another thing I like to do. So there's a reason I'm not moving the pieces, and it's not just to annoy you. It's to practice
no,
visualization.
no, the queen can go to c8, right?
Exactly. And by that type of visualization is challenging for a lot of players because in the starting position this is blocked,
Mm.
and also the rook was on c7, but it is now on e7. So exactly, the queen can go to c8. Now,
Oh,
that's an interesting position to think about because
yeah.
you got a rook and a bishop for a queen, so it's not quite enough material, but it's close. And black is quite tied down. So,
Mm.
maybe white's still doing well there, but given how dominant your position is to begin with, maybe you don't want to sacrifice a queen speculatively because, that sort of thing can go wrong, and maybe you don't need to. But queen takes,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah. It yeah. I can't get that queen sacrifice to work.
So okay, queen takes c4 though is a very good suggestion because we're getting the rook and the bishop. So queen takes c4, b takes c4. So we were looking at rook takes c7 check. It looks like pretty promising, but not absolutely clear. But is there a different option?
I would like to get the queen in to participate, or get more pieces in. But I think probably in this position I would just double the rooks. But there's
Yeah,
there's something better here, like you said.
yeah. And
Okay, so
again,
we
and
got
if you play
we got
rook
suggestion.
fa1, your chances of winning this
Yeah,
game are very good for sure.
we got
But
the
after queen,
suggestion. Knight takes
yeah,
bishop instead.
right. So after the queen takes c4, b takes c4, knight takes c7, what about that one?
Wait, what did you say now?
So yeah, so we're still looking at the queen sack. So queen takes c4, b takes c4, but then
Uh,
instead of rook takes c7, we could play knight takes.
yeah. Uh, that looks scary indeed. Because you're threatening that discovered attack and you have a free knight jump. Wait, the queen is trapped.
Yeah,
Now the queen is trapped because the
queen
king is on d7.
exactly.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
so this is what happened, and actually, this was obviously Sophia Polgar was, clearly well aware of this when she played h3. This was her idea,
Mm, mm.
and so this did happen on the board.
Oh, that's so cool.
Queen is trapped, and Black just resigned in this position because he's going to be down at least in exchange with a terrible position still. So for instance, well, it could even be checkmate. I mean, like say this is mate, but what I don't even know what the best Black can do is like maybe king up, but then not only is white up in exchange, but
Oh,
this
that
pawn is
pawn.
moving
Yeah.
very quickly. Um, so
Uh, uh,
Black, mm,
yeah. We got in the chat. I got the right idea, but the wrong order, which happens all the time. That happens all the time to me as well.
yep, that's one of the best calculation tips I've heard is if you're calculating a line and it seems to be almost working, but not
Mm,
quite, try the same moves in a different order.
mm, mm.
And I'm not sure which order um, they mean, but one thing that is worth pointing out is knight takes c4 first. In fact, this would be a really big mistake because now you just
Yeah,
traded all those beautiful active pieces. You just traded for all black's pieces, which couldn't move. So this really gives away your advantage.
yeah.
So you don't want to do this. Uh, but, yep, indeed, the queen sack first, and then trapping the queen and winning the game. And what's interesting to think about here is notice that it was indeed this knight that was on the outpost
Mm,
that finished the game with this beautiful tactic.
yeah.
So in this position, could we anticipate, not even Sophia Poldar is going to be like bum 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 bum, and then I'm going to sack the queen and knight c7. Like you can't calculate something like that because that depended on
The opponent's
I'm
response to
like
what
the
you
opponent's
ordered.
responses, which you couldn't really anticipate at this
Yeah.
point. But if you understand the value of the outpost, you actually know, I don't exactly know how it's going to work or the specifics of like what knight move is going to win this game,
Mm.
but I know there is a very high chance that in one way or another, having this knight is going to win me the game in the long run because a knight on an outpost in the enemy's territory is just a very valuable thing to have in many scenarios.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good way of putting it because I think in this position right here, I think a lot of beginners would try to get the knight b6 fork to happen, because you see a potential tactical motif that you know, but it's not about finding that tactic as fast as possible or force a tactic. It's just about realizing that the knight can never be dislodged from that square. So the knight can just stay there and 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 uh, and bide its time until the moment comes, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. It's
If it
just
comes.
mhm,
But still, it's annoying
yeah.
for the
But
opponent to have it
you
there.
know, you can be pretty confident that moment is going to come sooner or later because there's just this is the whole idea of positional chess. There's characteristics of features of a position that are just good for you, even if they're not connected to like an immediate threat. It's just a
Mm,
good thing to have.
mm. Yeah, and also the way you described the value of the outpost, it gave me an aha moment. I think that it's about it's the start of getting your pieces into the enemy territory. So it's like that was a good way of putting it.
Excellent.
Um,
Okay, great. Yeah.
I just need to say to chat, they're trying to type in the commands, but it doesn't work today for some reason. None of the commands work today. So I don't know if Streamlabs is down or what the thing is, but if you have any questions, just ask in the chat and I will manually tell you the old way. Okay, so this was a great exercise.
Okay, excellent. Let's proceed to the next position because so in this one, the outpost is already established and it was just taking advantage of it. Often the challenge is how do you create that? Okay, so I've got another position for you.
Mm-hmm.
So first you might think of this is white to move. What are the weak squares or potential outposts in black's position? We already have
We
one.
already have one, I guess, on d5. There's also one on f5,
Yep,
right?
absolutely. Exactly. Remember, can't be defended by opponent's pawns is controlled by our pawns. So exactly, d5 and f5. And we already occupy one.
Mm-mm. But black could trade the knight away. We don't want that.
Mhm. It could, although even then our bishop would take. So
Yeah,
the
the
knight
bishop is
is
on the
definitely the
outpost.
piece that is um, most most commonly associated with an outpost and often the most valuable on an outpost. But other pieces can use it too. So let's just suppose I just play a random move, like this is not a good move, but just to show you, and black
Mm.
trades. The bishop is also extremely strong here. This
Yeah.
is still quite good for us.
Okay. And we have another knight that could potentially land there sometime in the future.
Exactly. So, okay, with that in mind, what should our plan be with white and what move should we start with here?
Um. Yeah. We got the suggestion: knight f8, knight g3. I was thinking, why are we not castled? Uh, I was
Hmm.
thinking, I was thinking, knight f1, knight c3, maybe. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so knight f1, exactly. This is an excellent move because we've got this knight currently on the rim. A knight on the rim is dim, so we don't love
Mm,
that.
mm,
But we want to bring it in touch with one of these outpost squares.
mm.
So exactly, knight f1 is a great move. And
Oh, was
then,
it right?
yeah, knight f1 is the best move. And then we were planning to go to e3 and then at some moment, at the right moment, jump into one of these outposts.
Mm, mm.
Um, as far as castle, I mean, castle castling in general in the game of chess is a great move. In this position, the center is pretty stable.
Mm.
Black can't do anything to our king quickly, at least. And if we castle, then we are blocking this knight maneuver that we want
Yeah,
to do.
yeah,
So it's a little bit better to bring the knight first. We could still castle in a few moves.
yeah. I just want to quick note. You guys are allowed to come with suggestions in the chat. Actually, we do welcome that. So it's just nice to have you guys interacting. And also, if you have any questions for Nate at any point, feel free to ask. He's here today for you guys, not for me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not a game. This is a lesson. So the more
Yeah,
questions or comments, the better.
yeah. So I got knight f1 right. Yes, I got the
Yes,
second
very
move right
good.
as well.
So it seems like your positional skills are pretty good so far.
Oh, that's
Um, okay, let's see how it proceeded. Black played b6 and white played knight e3.
mm,
Um, and black decided to play g4.
hmm.
Um, and at this moment, white played knight f5. And so you can see by understanding that concept of the outpost, white is already starting to build up a powerful attack on the king side. Now, it's a bit of a double-edged move because
Yeah, because you don't you just rid yourself. You lose the outpost now, right?
exactly that's a great point. So if takes, pawn takes, capturing with a pawn onto an outpost
Mm,
is generally something we don't want to do
mm.
because remember the whole point of an outpost is it's a square where our pieces can infiltrate. If our own pawn occupies that square, obviously our pieces legally cannot go there. So generally that's not something you want to do, but chess is,
But
chess is always
here, oh, it's oh yeah. I'm barely. I get so excited because now I see the king attacks. I can't even shut up. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Let's say chat is saying we get the d4 square in return.
Yeah, so we've got, I mean, chess is always a game of trade-offs, trading one advantage for another. So f5 is no longer an outpost, but we still have our knight on an out. Well, I guess not technically an outpost, but still a weakness and a great square. So both our knight and our bishop still have great squares. And now this is building up into a kingside attack because
Mm.
we get this f pawn, which can maybe advance to f6.
Mm. Yeah, chat is suggesting
Pressure here.
f6 and infiltrate queen takes h6. I was thinking that as well, but right now, do we need to prepare it because we have two defenders of f6 or?
Well, it's black to move here, but if black's not careful, this could work because the bishop could take and then our queen could come in,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've also got this bishop lined up with black's king that could be dangerous,
Mm.
and this pawn is quite weak and isolated. So we could also think about things like queen e2 and g4. Having
Um,
said all that,
you
oh
got a
sorry, go
question.
ahead.
You got a question, by the way.
Mhm.
Why would black not play pawn to f5 to break the outpost before white establishes both knights?
Yeah, great question. So let's say so we played knight f6 in the game. Black played b5, f5. Very reasonable suggestion to try to fight against those outposts. Okay,
Oh,
how should we
I
react to
think
this?
don't we have a tactic here? No, we don't.
I
I
mean,
thought I tried to make knight f6 check work, and then you get the it doesn't work.
yeah, so I mean, definitely you are absolutely right that your tactical radar is going off here because we have this lined up. We've got an undefended piece. Yeah, I agree. I don't see a way to exploit it immediately because knight f6 check or knight e7 check, queen takes defends the
Yeah,
bishop.
doesn't work.
Although I guess then we would actually get this knight over here, but it
Yeah,
still looks like it's ultimately just a big trade,
yeah.
which is probably not what we want.
Knight b6. Those is suggesting knight
Feel
b6. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this move is probably not forcing enough. So, like, for example, knight b6, bishop takes a2.
Yeah.
And then what?
Take the rook and then the bishop.
Well, so I think if, well, maybe that even works. Interesting. I was thinking knight b6, bishop takes a2, knight takes e6, bishop e6.
Hmm.
Uh, and then, so for the moment, you're up in exchange, but your knight is almost trapped.
Mm. Wait, I don't get it. Isn't that safe? Knight b6, bishop takes a2, knight takes c8. Then I don't know, queen takes knight and rook takes bishop. Is that not good?
Yeah, so I was thinking rather than
You're retreating the
after
bishop?
knight takes e8, rather than take your knight, I was thinking black could retreat their bishop.
Yeah.
But then actually, you have knight takes a7, or even knight takes d6, because the queen is overworked. If the queen captures our knight, then finally our queen takes the knight on a5.
Oh, this is a visualization exercise now that you're not
Yeah, yeah,
doing the
we're doing
courtesy of drawing arrows.
ex exactly. So the line is knight b6, bishop takes a2,
Yeah.
knight takes c8, bishop
Retreat?
back to e6, and then you can even go knight takes d6, queen takes a5,
Ah.
and white is emerging up some material. So maybe this does work. Uh,
It was so
actually,
unnatural for me to
yeah,
even
knight
spot knight
knight
b6 because it
b6.
looks like it's in the wrong direction.
It doesn't like feel like it should work, but I don't see how to refute it, in fact. Now, if you want to keep things simpler, I think white is also doing very well after the really simple move, e takes f5.
Mm.
Now, black can't take with the bishop because then we would have some sort of nasty discovered check.
Mm.
So rook takes, but then knight f e3. So again, no longer an outpost because black did eliminate uh, our pawn, but this is still a weak square that we have great control over, and by pushing that f pawn,
Yeah, the king safety.
the king is opened, and really all of these light squares
Yeah,
around black's king are extremely
dangerous.
weak. So
Yeah.
good suggestion, but it does not solve black's problems in the position.
No, they
But
get
then
rid of the outpost,
mm,
but I think the king safety is too compromised.
exactly. So yeah, still very difficult for black.
Chat
Um,
is also commenting on the knight b6 move, saying, "I wouldn't give up such a strong knight for a rook."
yeah, I mean reasonable. Yeah, it's, at some point the outpost might be even so powerful that yeah, you don't even want to win the exchange even if you can.
And also, you got a thank you for the explanation of f5. So just keep the questions coming. These
Yeah,
digressions are interesting, I think.
excellent. So yeah, great question, great discussion. The main point though, I to take away from this one is uh the idea of improving your worst place piece. So if you've got a piece that is not doing anything and you can bring
Mm.
it to an ideal position, especially looking at an outpost, that improves your position tremendously because you take a piece that had little value, it's not doing anything, you make it into a really powerful piece that just improves your position by a huge amount.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great exercise. But where was the knockout blow before we went into the digression?
Oh, actually, well, I've got my that one I had cut off at that point. I guess maybe I should extend some of these to like so you can see the full
Yeah,
check.
I want to see the final punch.
Yeah, I'll have to make a note of that one for next time.
Nova Cheska is saying after we're still on f5. After f5, if e takes f6, you still have knight b6. f5, e takes f5, rook takes f5, knight e3 followed by knight b2.
So in this position, or maybe,
Knight e3, and then you still have knight b6. He's saying,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
this is probably good too. And this is like it's another illustration of the point that if you have these positional assets, like controlling a weak square in the opponent's position, there are often many good opportunities. So probably, you could do several different things in several different move orders
Yeah.
and gain an advantage.
Okay. Let's go to the next one.
Sure.
I'm having a lot of fun with this.
Okay, excellent. Okay, this one, just another example of the similar ideas. This one is black to move.
We can create an outpost here with if we do d5, we have an outpost on c4.
Mhm. Yep. So yeah, we've
Uh,
got this rook on a weak square. Yeah, d5 could make c4 into an outpost.
and e4 is not an outpost because f pawn could go to f3 in the future. But right now the knight is blocking. b5 wouldn't work since rook can just take... Yeah, I said d5, not b5. b5 would just give a pawn. Wait, what was the question here? Was it how do we create an outpost? Or
Just what's the
ah,
best idea for black?
uh, oh, you were talking to yourself, not correcting me. That's okay. I think it's great if you talk with yourself in the chat. F4 we got suggested. Um, doesn't that just give a pawn?
Yeah, I think it looks like f4, maybe bishop takes. Not sure if we're getting anything in return for that pawn.
No. Uh, Chat is asking, is e4 an outpost with the queen? Technically, the f pawn could go to f3. Chat is saying improving moves can be ambiguous sometimes. Okay, let's see if I... yeah, I liked d5 here. Is it not good?
Okay, so d5 does reinforce this rook and make c4 an outpost. However, is there any downside to this move?
It opens up the opponent's bishop. It gives away the e5 square.
Yeah, actually, it
Ah, I
creates an
don't want
outpost
to...
for
Yeah,
white
yeah,
too, right?
yeah, yeah, it's a
And I don't think
mistake.
I think that's not such a good trade-off because at the
Mm,
moment, our control, even without a pawn, our control of c4 is quite good.
mm, mm.
So d5 is not incredibly necessary, but
Oh, can we do... can we make b5 happen? A6, b5, can we make that happen? Some... How,
so just to finish saying about d5, for the moment,
mm,
white cannot use the e5 square whatsoever.
mm.
But after d5, actually, this becomes a very useful
Yeah,
outpost for white where a bishop or knight could come in.
yeah, it's horrible. It looks
But
horrible.
what I'm thinking more with this example is more of that same idea of improving the worst place piece.
Yeah, the knight on h5 is a sore thumb. So I guess you could just reroute that to e4.
Exactly. Yeah, we can bring this knight on the rim back
Mm-hmm.
and then look at one of these squares. E4, not technically an outpost, but it can still be, at the end of the day, the goal of chess is not to create as many outposts as possible. It's just to beat our opponent. So something I like to think about a lot is there's this so Jakob Aagaard, who's a grandmaster and like a famous chess trainer, has these three questions
Yeah.
to think about a position. So it's one is where are the weaknesses?
Mm-hmm.
Two is what is the worst place piece?
Mm.
And three is what is my opponent's idea?
Mm.
And the idea is if you think about those three, usually at least one of those gives you a good idea of what to do in the position.
Would question? Would
Hmm.
White like to play e4 sometime?
Mm,
What does White want?
yeah, well, so at the moment, White, I think, mostly wants to survive because they're under some pressure here.
Yeah.
This backward pawn is a bit weak, and after this good move, knight f6, then knight e4 or knight d5, adding more pressure to this pawn. Uh,
That's funny.
is a good move. So all three questions don't always apply equally, but usually at least one of them gives you some sort of idea in the position. Um, in particular, combining those first two, where are the weaknesses and what is my worst place piece, often gives a good, if you can bring your worst piece into contact with your opponent's biggest weakness,
Mm.
that's often a very good idea. So that's the case here. We take this knight, which is on the rim, we bring it back to the center, and then we're going to follow up with knight e4 or knight d5 and
So,
increase the pressure.
so to summarize, where are the weakness? What is the worst place piece? And what is our opponent's idea? So the opponent's idea
Exactly.
is to survive. Chat is suggesting that a white would like to trade off pieces in this position.
Exactly. Probably the relative, maybe the best move for white would be something like queen b2, anticipating that that queen would be hit. And then if knight e4, maybe knight d2, forcing some trades,
Mm,
relieves the pressure on white's position. So in
mm.
this case, maybe knight d5 is better, and white is tied down here. So the game is not over by any means, but just wanted to show you another example of improving a piece and attacking a weakness. But yeah, definitely those three questions um, are a good thing to remember. Okay,
Those
got the.
really good. Those are really good thoughts rules.
So if you find yourself in a position where you're like, I have no clue what to do here, go through those three questions, and like
Yeah.
probably one of those will give you an idea.
Yeah, that's a great thought rule. Jakob Agar is a great trainer. I was fortunate enough to have him on stream earlier this year. It was an experience. But also I think Noel Studer, he has
Uh-huh.
some saying about talk to your pieces. Who is
Yep.
the happiest and who is the most unhappy?
Exactly. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's similar idea.
Mm, mm. Chat is saying, wait, what was chat saying? Isn't takes e4 free if white does e4? Yeah. It was a stupid suggestion. I was thinking maybe they could prepare it or something, but I was so focused on outposts that I didn't even realize that there was a big weakness there on c3 with that backward pawn. It's horrible.
Okay, let's look at. Actually, I want to. So I realize we're kind of getting to the end of our time. Let's actually skip to this one.
Oh, this
Um,
looks very different from everything I've played in my life. What kind of position is this?
I guess this looks like some sort of Queen's Gambit declined.
Ah, so they have a weakness on e3.
Yep.
Uh, mm,
Right. So White has just played Knight e5.
mm,
So we're in that position we talked about that can be somewhat uncomfortable if the opponent is invading into your territory.
mm.
Um, but so I guess first question is e5 an outpost?
We could potentially do f6. So then it would not be an outpost because we can chase that knight away. But I guess it's a temporary outpost.
Yeah, it's sort of outpost-ish, but
Mm,
you're right. It's not an outpost because we do have a pawn that can attack it. Not right now, but at some point, and having that possibility to chase it away with a pawn, even if we can't do it immediately, is quite important. Um,
Yeah,
and then my question is, as black, how should we react? Because, yeah, very common situation you face, often an uncomfortable situation when the opponent invades into your territory. How should we react? What should our plan be here?
we have some suggestions in the chat. Knight b6, c4 in mind. Um, Not knight e4. White just takes. Yeah, I was looking at that as well. Just trading away that knight. It doesn't look so fun because I guess it would open the rook and it would make it even harder to get to e3.
Yeah, it looks
And
so. Knight e4 immediately. Look, yeah, white could take, and I don't see black's follow up here, so that was a pawn down.
yeah, I was thinking knight takes e5. That was what I was thinking about. That I would not like, I think, because they can open the rook and it gets harder for us to get to the e3 weakness in this position, right?
Yeah, this looks very dangerous because white's
Yeah,
gaining a lot of space
yeah.
and the use of the F file.
So I don't like the trades. So I guess your question was how do we react in these situations when the opponent is invading the territory? That is a very good question. I'm not sure if I know the answer to that actually. Maybe it keep cool. Don't
Yep.
overreact.
Take a deep breath. That's probably like a good place to start.
Yeah. Uh,
So
and
something else you could think about though is, are there any potential outposts in white's position that we can use?
mm, if 4 is a potential one, we could create one on c4 maybe if we get to immobilize the pawn on b2. I don't know how to make that happen. Maybe a5, a4.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting suggestion. A5, A4 is actually
We need
quite
to
a
prepare
reasonable
it though.
idea
We
in
need to
the
prepare
position.
it though. But mm, uh, no, we have a lot of just suggestions from chat here. We have is knight f8, e6 another idea, and then we have knight b6, and then move the other knight to d7. Kind of slow, but it kicks the knight. Pawn to c5 as black.
Yeah, all great suggestions. So, Nova Chess, is that Shalom? Nova Chess?
I
In
don't
any
know.
case,
I'm not sure.
Knight B6, Knight D7, and finally F6. You could do this, but I think this is mm,
Yes, it is
a,
shalom.
a a bit more passive than we need to go. Like we're spending a lot of moves to react to White's idea, and you could do it, but you don't want to let your opponent entirely set the agenda for the game. You want to restrict their ideas while at the same time advancing your own ideas.
I like.
Um,
I think I like the idea of a4, maybe knight b6, and try to go for a4. But I guess it can be stopped. Nova Chess is shalom, by the way. He says hello.
okay, awesome. Hello, Shalom. Yeah, we've chatted before on a few different forums, but yeah. So okay, A5 and then C5 was is also a suggestion,
Yeah.
and in fact, this was played in the game. It's a pawn break.
Mm.
Um, there's definitely some logic to this move, especially since White has played F4, which weakens their king. So there is, some justification to try to open the center and open a path to that king.
I was a bit stressed about getting the isolated pawn, but maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah, I'm not so scared of that because I think if
Mm.
White took, I would be quite happy because after, let's say, Knight takes,
Mm.
now my knights are controlling E4. I'm attacking the queen. Maybe I can also play D4 and just really blow up the center at the right
Mm.
moment.
Mm.
But it feels like my pieces are springing to life in a way I like here. But I
Mm.
think as white, I would not be inclined to take that. I might just play a move like bishop D2. And it's kind of hard to increase the pressure on D4. I would like this a bit more maybe if our knight was still back on C8
Mm.
and we
So
could
you
play
could get it to
C6.
c6, yeah.
Yeah. As it is, I mean, we could maybe play like c4 and try to do some sort of queenside pawn avalanche. Uh, Takes quite some time to achieve that, but if we can pull it off without white doing anything to us, could work.
Hmm.
So it's a reasonable option, but my favorite plan in the position is to play knight b6. Um, but let's
Hmm.
suppose bishop d2, then the move knight b6 on its own is just a move, but can you see the follow-up that I have in mind? Where is this knight going?
Chat is suggesting c8, d6.
Exactly. So we're starting a knight maneuver, and the point ultimately is to control this outpost.
Hmm. That's a nice one. That was a good suggestion, Hazelot.
Yeah, Hazelot, very good.
That is
And
some A1 route planning.
exactly. And just to say, so control that square is going to be very helpful. Let's see like just one thing that could happen if white goes all out to attack our king,
Mm.
because this does appear to be white's plan since they played f4 and knight e5, they seem to want to attack our king. But after knight d6, g5, we're in time to play knight e4,
Mm.
and I think if anyone, white is probably in more danger than we are here. Because when you advance these
Yeah,
pawns, um, you weaken your own king quite a lot too.
yeah,
And black, we have a firm foothold in the center, and we move that knight, so we're even ready to think about f6 and chasing white's knight away.
yeah,
So this is double edged, but not bad for black. And I think it's also important to remember not to overreact when your opponent tries to be aggressive. Like
mm.
another really common thing I see in like sort of beginner to intermediate games is the opponent plays a move that signals they want to be aggressive,
Mm.
and then the other player sort of takes their word for it and plays very passively. Um,
Yeah.
your opponent can't just run you over just because they want to. Like you have to look at the resources that are in the position. Do they really have the position to back up what they're trying to do?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting point. It was one of the things taught me. Uh, Chess Andras. I mentioned this quite a bit of times already, but it was a aha moment for me. Because I was one of those players, like I would decide on the first move that I'm going for the checkmate. I'm going for a kingside attack, and it's like you need to deserve that. You
Hmm.
can't just start a game and decide I'm going for a king attack now. It doesn't work that way. You need to earn it. You need to have a good position, and but I would say one of the things that's been positive about playing chess like that for for a while is that you really learn how difficult it is to make this king attacks work. So I don't get so stressed when I get these pawn storms about towards my king, but because it's like okay, show me then, we make it
Yeah,
work. It's not so easy.
exactly. And I see a question in the chat. Why route the D knight to the outpost when the F knight can get there in one move? And the reason for that
Mm.
was
You
if
could
we
just
played knight
straight,
e4
yeah,
straight away, white would just capture twice and win a pawn.
yeah.
So we needed to bring the other knight to control that square.
And we also got the question, wouldn't that be slow? The
Um,
knight maneuver, but I guess the position.
it is slow. It is absolutely slow because we're taking three moves to bring our knight one square. But um, we have a very solid and stable position in the center
Mm,
that's hard for white to break down.
mm.
So we can get away with it here. If we had a position where the center was much more open, or our opponent was creating more direct threats, then yeah, spending three moves to move our knight around would not be acceptable. But in this position, it's stable enough, it's quiet enough that we can do a maneuver like this.
I have a question for you. We talked a bit about it before the stream started, but you're doing your speed run, right? On
Yes.
your um, And that is tied to your new Chessable course, right? That you're doing a speed run with your repertoire, if I got
Yeah,
that
yeah.
right.
So I've got my one knight f3 for white and my Nimzovich Sicilian for black. So I'm using those. Yeah.
Yeah, and what is your? Of course, you're a FIDE master, but what is your rating?
Um.
Online rating?
So like chess.com Blitz
Yeah,
is like in the 2600s.
yeah, 2600. Okay. So, what I thought was very interesting, what was the key mistakes that you saw in your speedrun around, yeah, let's say, uh, intermediate beginner. So if we say like
Hmm.
1200 to 1500, what are some key mistakes people are making?
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the biggest ones I've seen is honestly people not following the opening principles. So not controlling the center and
Yeah,
developing a piece with every move.
yeah.
So what I've seen quite a lot of is we'll have games where they are maybe making those little pawn moves on the edge of the board, like h6 or
Mm,
a6,
mm,
right? When they're not developed, so wasting a lot of time, or taking the
yeah,
same piece and moving it over and over and over while the other pieces are undeveloped.
yeah.
So that allows me to
Get a lead in
get a lead
development.
in development quite often.
Mm,
And then I'm glad you did a pawn break class because often once you have that lead in development,
yeah,
a pawn break is what you use to break the position open and then take those more, the lead in development, your more active pieces, and just break it open and convert that into an attack and win the game.
yeah. Because then you have earned the attack because your position is superior because of that lead in development. Um, so if you want to win more on that level, you should just follow the basic principles, or is what you're saying? Controlling the center and developing and not wasting
Yeah,
moves.
it, it does work really well. It does, like everything in chess, it's like a skill that you have to know how to, it's not obviously if I just say follow the opening principles, control the center, develop your piece's castle, right? Everyone can understand that. Like it's only three things. Even if you've never heard that before, it's pretty easy to understand. But then implementing it is the challenge, right? And
Mm,
what I found a lot of players is maybe they get hit with, earlier in your chess career, you sort of get hit with some sort of tactic
mm,
or some quick attack, and then a lot of players react to that, but by changing their style to be extremely defensive. Like there's
yeah,
there's this word from other games called turtling,
yeah,
in
yeah,
like
yeah,
real
yeah,
strategy games, where you just sort of you play really defensive and try to
yeah,
protect yourself from all directions, right? And that can be a natural reaction to like you get in trouble in the opening early on.
yeah.
Um,
Because you're wasting too much time.
yeah, exactly. And that even can work. I mean, you can win some games like that, but if your goal is to climb through the ranks and ultimately get to like 1600, 1800 plus, I think you want to work on playing more aggressively and fluid. Like there are two different ways you can deal with that kind of problem. You turtle and you play really really safe and just make sure everything's defended and sort of wait your opponent out.
Mm,
And honestly, that can work at like a 1000 or 1200 level. But if you want to beat stronger opponents, that type of ultra defensive style is probably not going to give them a lot of problems. So the better way of doing it, which takes a bit more skill, but is going to allow you to become stronger in the long run, is you actually play quite aggressively and dynamically,
mm.
and your opponent can't even like you're causing so many problems from them that it's really very difficult for them to attack you because they have to be worried about their own defense.
The best defense is a strong offense, right?
Exactly. So
I can't
yeah.
relate to that turtling at all because I feel so unsafe when I play defensively because then I just feel like the opponent has the initiative and I respect the initiative I think too much. so
Mm.
so for me I feel a lot safer when I can attack. So um but I guess I should probably practice this defense a bit more. Because I feel very unsafe when I have to defend. I think it's super scary. then that's much more scary than initiating the attack myself, I think. Uh, Shalom is saying, "Yep, C goes and then turtle up. Have you been studying my games as black?" He's asking.
Yeah. So
uh,
well, everyone's I mean, if you can attack, it's great. Of course, sometimes in chess, your opponent just does get a good position or attack, and you have no choice but to
mm,
defend. But
mm.
you don't want to come into the game with a defensive or passive mentality before that's really necessary.
Yeah, you also got a question, by the way. Let's see. Is it better to only do a6, h6 once the b5, g5 square is threatened by the opposing bishop? Since I often find myself doing those moves early before castling to avoid that bishop pin on my knight and queen. I guess that is exactly what you've been seeing on this level that you talked about.
Yeah, it's tough to give a general answer because it's not that H6
Mm,
and or A6 are never good moves. But I would say that most players at that level uh, do those moves too early and too
mm,
often, and it causes them to waste too much time that they should be using to develop their pieces. So I would say try not to do those moves unless see if you can get away without using those moves. If you can use the moves you're using for those little pawn moves and
mm.
instead use those to develop a piece, most of the time that's going to work out better for you.
Because when you do the pawn move after the bishop has arrived, at least you can kind of justify it because the opponent has to move the bishop again, so you don't fall behind in the development that way. And but also, I think a lot of beginners find those bishop pins very uncomfortable, and maybe they're also scared of the knight jumping, getting in that fork on f7. um,
Yep.
but the
Let
thing,
me
but the thing is, you can usually deal with it. You shouldn't be so scared of that happening because, especially moving the knight up to those squares early, is usually not good because then they should have spent that time developing another piece. So it's usually a bad move, anyways. So you can find ways to refute it. Uh, but I guess the best solution, I think, would be to not play those a6, h6 moves and then analyze the game after if it goes wrong because of that bishop pin or a knight jumping. Analyze the game after and see, okay, how should I have refuted that?
Yep, I'm trying to find one of these. So this wasn't one of my planned examples, but just to show everyone what this looks like, I'm trying to see if I have a speed run game that is a good example of this.
Oh, that would be very fun to see, actually. Uh, and you are uploading this to your YouTube, right? The speedruns.
Yeah, the speed runs are on my YouTube.
I posted a link in the chat. I would recommend taking a look on Nate's YouTube channel because it's free chess content and he's a great teacher. So I think these speedruns are very educational because you get the stronger player to explain what they are doing wrong.
Here's,
Solveig, great idea to not play them and then analyze afterwards. Yeah, I think that is the best way to learn. Just we need to be diligent about analyzing the games. I was very inspired by Cameron Heidi, actually. Um, she has a great YouTube video on her secret master document, and I've started employing that because of her. And that is basically why I lose, the why I lose document. So
yeah,
each
I
chess
love that
game,
idea. I know the video
yeah,
you're talking about. It's a great idea.
I love it. And it's just like so simple because each game you lose, plot it into that why do I lose document. Write down what color did you play, what was the opening, and then write down a sentence on or two on why you lost. And then over time, you will have this great document that outlines all the reasons why you're losing, and then you get the stats on it. So then you can go in and see, oh, I usually lose in this opening line, and then okay, actually go in and learn about that opening because you're losing all the time because of it, and you can see common denominator. You're losing the tactics. Okay, ramp up your tactics training. It's really good. So you can find it. I can actually see if I can find that video on YouTube actually and link it in the chat. It's really good. Um, And you are pulling up some stuff here now. I can see,
Yep,
Nate.
I just loaded a game. Yeah, that's a really good video and idea because, well, I think if anyone who studies chess has probably heard that you're supposed to review your games. Um, but I think most people kind of review their games like one move and one game at a time, which is
Mm.
important to do. But it's also important to look like across multiple games for patterns. So if you create that document, usually what you find is that like all these different losses that seem to be isolated, when you actually write down what caused the losses,
Yeah.
often it's actually just like the same one or two types of errors that are causing quite a lot of your losses. So then if you can address that,
Mm.
now you've got something that is removing a lot of losses and adding wins across the board.
Yeah, and because of that document, because I'm a psychopath, I love spreadsheets. I almost get excited when I lose because I get to plot it into the spreadsheet.
Well, no, that's
So,
that's the perfect attitude, right? Because your losses are like the best clues about what you need to improve.
yeah.
Let me just show you. I just want probably show this game and then I'll probably have to call it a day. But I just wanted to
Yeah.
show this example because I think it'll people asking about the speed run and like the common mistakes. It'll be easier to understand with the concrete example. So I'm playing one knight f3. This is like what my Chessable course is on for white, but it's not that big of a deal. The principles really apply in every opening.
Yeah.
So I start with, so this is, a so-called hyper-modern approach where you start with the wing, but
Mm.
we're still planning to contest the center later.
Mm.
So my opponent goes for sort of a semi-Slav setup, which is fine. I castled, and now I start fighting for the center with c4.
This looks like an English now.
Yeah, c4 is sort of taking it into English-ish territory. Okay, so here's the
Yeah.
interesting moment, right? Because we're talking about this whole idea of outposts
Yeah.
or not outposts. Uh,
This is
g4 is
just silly.
exactly this is the problem with invading on not an, well, there's several problems with this. One is that black still has, I mean,
Mm.
most pieces are not developed, so black should do something like, I mean, castle would be a very sensible move,
Yeah.
or maybe you could do like knight d7. You
Mm.
should be castling and developing. There's no reason in the position to start an attack here.
No.
But
So you're breaking one of the fundamental opening principles here because you're moving an officer twice in the opening, which you should avoid unless there is a specific reason to do it. If I find that usually if it's good to move an officer twice in the opening, it's usually because your opponent has made a mistake of some sort. Um, so
exactly.
yeah,
And so here it's also important not to react too passively because my opponent clearly is signaling they want to attack me, but if you just survey the position logically, you can just see, okay, this is nonsense. My opponent has no right to attack me, so I don't need
yeah,
to react defensively.
yeah,
So I could even play, if I played h3, I don't think black has anything better than to go back.
yeah,
So I could do that, but also for the moment, uh, this knight is not doing anything, and it's kind of loose here. I could possibly have some sort of tactic exploiting that at some point.
yeah. If you get to do like a discovered attack with the queen, maybe at some point, and you could get the knight for free, maybe something, something. I think one of the reasons I think I did this when I was my first year at chess. I did this knight g4 move, and I justified it because I'm provoking a weakness with the h3, and then I thought, okay, I'm happy to go back because I provoked a weakness in my mind. Because then I thought, okay, now it gets easier for me to induce the attack on the king side later. So I think that might be a misunderstanding that more people hold on this level. I don't know if you have any
Well, there's
comments to that.
yeah, I mean there's a grain of truth to it in terms of provoking a weakness, but to spend two moves to do
Yeah,
that in the opening when you have many pieces that are not developed is very costly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I just played knight c3, just, you know,
Sensible.
yeah, just bringing out another important, like, you don't have to react to your opponent's moves in a one-for-one fashion,
Mm.
meaning knight g4, like h3 is a move that reacts to this move, but you're also allowed to just keep doing your own thing.
Mm. Mm.
Like, you don't have to react to what your opponent's doing if you don't want to.
Mm.
So I thought, okay, the knight is not doing anything, it's not threatening me, I'll just develop another piece.
Yeah.
Now knight d7, and here is where I decided to go for the pawn break, e4, and this is made possible because black uh to move the uh same piece twice, and that notice the king is still in the center.
Mm.
So I played e4 to open the center. Now, if this knight was still here and
Yeah.
black had castled instead, and we had that position,
Mm.
then e4 would not be as powerful for me.
Right. Right.
So I played e4, and we're also getting closer to materializing this tactic you pointed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Black played bishop c5. So again, so black's whole strategy is to attack f2,
But it's
but this is
defended
not
twice.
it's not justified because they're moving the same pieces over and over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've already got it defended anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so I just went ahead and took a center pawn.
Yeah.
And then if this e file gets open, this is going to be super dangerous.
Ooh.
Um, and queen b6. So black has finally created a threat on f2.
Mm.
Um, but okay, there's a lot of ways to defend this. I could do like knight e4. I could do knight a4. I
Mm.
could probably even just ignore it. But I think the most sort of brutal way to just completely shut down black's ideas is just d4,
Yeah. That looks great.
just gaining even more control of the center. So black went back, I traded, and then here, just a simple tactic.
Oh.
So white to play here.
White to play. Chat is saying fork.
Pin, fork,
Pin fork.
every tactic.
So I'm not gonna. I thought. Do you want to say the fork, Chris Live? We have a juicy looking one. So too excited, lol. Yeah, I guess c5. Yeah.
Exactly. C5, very typical pattern, pawn fork.
Oh, this is so
So
devastating when this happened to
yeah.
you.
So black is losing a piece. And I went on from there to win the game. So I think I'm not saying this is like a masterpiece. Obviously, this is not
Mm.
the greatest game in the world, but it shows a lot of like extremely typical patterns at this level,
Mm.
like moving the same piece over and over with undeveloped pieces,
Mm.
uh, unjustified attacks that have no basis in the position, right?
Yeah.
So once you learn to spot that stuff and take advantage of it, then you can start crushing people at this level and start moving up.
So what? Wait, I will guess the elo. That's kind of fun. So I'm guessing the elo of this person. Wait, is this blitz or rapid?
I'm playing for this speed run it's 5+5. So I think
Oh,
that
okay.
is I believe that's classified as blitz on chess.com, but it's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's right on the border
So,
with rapid.
so I'm guessing the opponent's rating here is 800.
This is actually 1176.
What? Is it?
Yeah. And honestly, like I had a lot of games that look just like this at like 11, 12, 1300 levels. So, I think sometimes people like a lot of people make chess more complicated than it needs to be. Like control the center, bring out your pieces, be on the lookout for some tactics. If you can execute that every game, you can get pretty far with that.
Yeah. No, I'm very shocked. This is above 1,000 actually.
Yeah, and I mean, not every game. I do encounter some opponents in this range who are playing a lot more solidly as well. But um, it's not uncommon, definitely at this level, to see people, violating the opening principles. Uh, and what one other suggestion for a great way to work at this on this is go through like Paul Morphy games and try to
Hmm.
guess the moves because historically he really figured out and developed this concept of developing rapidly and
Mm.
converting it into an attack. So if you go back and you play through those Morphe games
Mm.
and you understand how he played, you can use those same strategies to defeat people at that like sort of 1000, 1200 type level today.
Because he developed so rapidly. Is that what you were saying? Is that
Exactly,
kind of
like the
is
sort
that
of the
kind of what
chess,
it's known for?
yeah, the kind of chess culture and like metagame at that point, people would just like often bring a few pieces out and start a crazy attack.
Mm. Mm.
And he was like the guy who really figured out like, hey, if I use every single piece, I can just crush everyone. Now, at
Mm.
that he was like the only person in the world who really appreciated that time. So that was enough to make him like the best player in the world.
Yeah,
He
but
wasn't,
it's kind of difficult, when you have to figure it out on your own. It was a discovery back then, I guess.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's one of the amazing things about him is there's a lot of different ways you can try to determine, do like the GOAT discussion of like who is the greatest chess player. But one way to think about it would be who is like the farthest ahead of their contemporaries.
Mm.
And if that's what you go by, then I think Morphy still has a pretty uh, good claim to be the greatest player ever because, obviously he was not as
Mm.
strong as Magnus Carlsen or Gary Kasparov if you just like did a time warp and matched them up.
But
But
compared to his
compared to
opponent,
the other people at the time,
yeah.
like everyone else was not good, and he somehow figured out how to be really good, like just
Yeah.
like from scratch on his own, which is like a very amazing thing.
Yeah, that's a huge feat. And I think this is a sign actually for me to study Morphe games because this is the third time uh, the last month that people are saying you should study Morphe games. So I guess maybe that is something we can do on stream sometime. I know you need to go. We're like half an hour over time. So thank you so much, Nate, for staying with us extra. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. And I think the thing that really struck with me was your definition of why are outposts so good. And it's like getting this toe into the opponent's position, and uh,
Exactly.
and paving the way for the other pieces to infiltrate.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. That was really fun. I hope everyone will be able to try that out and kind of use some of those ideas in their games.
Yeah, that is the important part, right? Because we need to put theory into practice. So we need to actually practice creating those outposts, putting our pieces on those outposts, and experiencing how that feels in practice. So that conversion is important for the learning.
Okay, excellent. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me. Yeah, I hope everyone learned something, but yeah, super fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Nate, and I'll see you on X. Uh,
Yeah.
Once again, check out Nate's Chessable course and his YouTube channel. So everyone should go over to his YouTube channel and follow. So
All right.
thank you, Nate.
Okay,
See
thank you. I'll see you later.
see you on Twitter. Bye bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was a lot of fun. Let's see if I can find my just chatting scene. Um, did you guys enjoy? I enjoyed this a whole lot actually. Uh, and I have started experimenting with outposts a lot in my own games, and it's been a lot of fun because when I'm able to get in a really good outpost, I can just feel my partner, my opponent getting stressed and slowly imploding. So it's a lot of fun. Do you guys have any suggestions for a raid? We should probably raid someone. Are there any chess streamers live right now? Yeah, my partner gets stressed. Would you guys, by the way, be up to study some Morphe games on stream later? I need kind of a kick in my behind to do it. I'm checking Twitch to see if there's anyone who's live right now. I'm gonna do a stream with Cameron pretty soon, Rookie, because she has a big announcement coming very soon. So I will do a stream with her. Lonely Winter. Let's raid her. Lonely. I think it helps having a stronger player like you lead the discussion as well. Let's do Lonely Winter. Lonely Winter. Okay, say hi to her for me. And I will see you guys sooner than you think with Cameron. I'm really looking forward to that. Oh, she's playing over the board. Okay, but give her some support in the chat. So thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next week with Cameron Santa. So keep your snark to yourself. Bye bye.